We've been preaching for years already about what is actually strength for us, and it's a little bit different, the concept of strength to us than what it is to the mainstream fitness.
It's not just the overall human being that has declined, but even the modern training methods have declined in many ways.
In training, especially this is very true. If you don't do, then you don't know.
If the squat, deadlift and bench press and let's say row were the absolute best exercises you can do, then powerlifters would be the best athletes ever.
The barbell, like you said, is the highest tool because it's the most efficient. And again, you need to ask, most efficient for what?
Brain and the mind doesn't understand what is happening because the scapula is moving like this, everything flows.
Core goes like in like circular patterns or something.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that kind of get buried in the history, not because they didn't work, but just because there's some new idea became a dominating trend.
Like we are not saying these are bad things to do, but we are saying that focusing only on these things and thinking these things will give you everything is the wrong idea and a completely wrong idea.
You have a door here, you have tons of different options open up for you, like this garden of amazing things that you could be doing with your body, and you're like, bang, you just banged the door closed.
Yeah, he said exactly, strength is a skill, and that's where we differ. We say strength is not a skill.
Their strength is this. Our strength is like this. And what is this tiny amount of strength for them? Is that you are... So last year, me and Samuli, we did like about 20 podcasts. I think it was like almost exactly 20 podcasts. And you know, you've probably seen a ton of clips because we made those short videos of those. And some of those videos, they got very, very viral, like actually like millions of views. And this is of course great, you know, people... kind of like we get to spread our ideas this way, and it's fantastic. But I also noticed that due to this popularity, it was very clear that for some people there was some confusion. And this was especially related to some of the more recent podcasts that we had about the different ancient equipment, like this club here, the Indian clubs, and also about the ancient training methods in general, because we kind of, you know, focused a lot on those this year because we released the Iron King method. And yeah, so what I saw was that people had kind of questions, maybe misunderstandings, some confusion about, you know, why are we even like bringing this up in a way. And that I wanted to kind of like talk about this and open up on this subject because maybe other people also have these questions. So there's certain comments that we kind of picked up and trying to give some of the answers and views on this subject in this podcast.
Yeah, the funny thing was that actually thousands of people think that Eero is talking alone here, like having this podcast just by himself, and it's like all fake set up and there's no conversation and nothing, but no, I'm here also.
Yeah, we should bring this to the table first.
But I exist. I'm not like a...
the editors, you need to put Samuli more to the...
because sometimes in the short clip it's only like Eero talking because it's like 30 seconds sometimes or 40. You cannot feed it everything. So, but but there was like lots of misunderstandings, and I think lots of people were their idea was that the modern training and the barbell and all these things it's like the cutting edge. It's like the best thing humans have developed. So that's why we are using it, and not because of any other reason. There's this thing like especially the barbell is like the pinnacle of like the strength training development in the history of humankind, and nothing comes close.
Very interesting, actually. That where does that even come from? That view, like because they were comparing barbell to the same thing as comparing like the horse carriages to a car. So in their mind, it's like if you compare the Indian clubs or the ancient stuff to a barbell, it's the same as you compare like some old radio to a 4K TV. This was their comparison, which doesn't make any sense because there isn't that sort of linear development into training equipment, in my opinion at least, or even like if you look at the reality of it. Because the human body is not something that, you know, goes old either. We have the same body we had 100 years ago. We have the same body that we actually had 10,000, even maybe 100,000 years ago. Like just even looking at like the paleontology and the bones of the early humans.
And actually, I would say the human bodies have declined, especially over the last 50 years.
Oh yeah.
Like testosterone levels have gone down every decade, and the overall strength level.
I'm just talking about the underlying structure.
Yeah, the DNA and everything. Yeah, it has been the same, but even in this sense, like there has been decline. There has been declining the overall fitness. There has been decline in, and I, at this moment, because we come from the exact same background as all these people, like as everyone else. Like we did exactly the same thing as everyone else did, like dumbbells and barbells and calisthenics and bodyweight training, like everything you see on YouTube today, we did it like over 10 years ago. But and because of this, at this moment, I would say even the a lot of the modern training methods, they are behind. Like it's not just the overall human being that has declined, but even the modern training methods have declined in many ways.
Yeah, I think it is important to mention, like, yes, that we did this exact training, because so that actually gives us perspective. It's not like I'm this guy who just is into hippie stuff and into some kind of awkward training methods, because that's not the case. I've explored, for 10 years. So that's actually the thing, like, because of that, like, we have perspective. We have perspective into actually what works, what doesn't, and how these things actually work. We can like analyze the human body as we're training, because that is pretty much what we're specialized in. We can like see actually what is happening in the body, and then through that we can even teach other people. Our methods are based on a lot of this stuff. And the problem with a lot of these guys in these comments, I think, is that they think, or they are talking like they know about this stuff when they haven't done anything. And if you, in training, especially this is very true. If you don't do, then you don't know. Like, you can watch a video and try to judge based on that. You can read a book about some methods, but if you haven't actually done that training by yourself, you have no idea what it actually is doing to your body. Like, it's very few people can analyze like that way. Yeah, so that's the problem, I think.
Yeah, that's the problem, especially today, because strength training, it's more like an art, and it's more like a thing you have to do. It's like about doing. But nowadays, everything is about the scientific studies and about just thinking everything like logically in your head.
Yeah, before
you first think in your head and then you do, instead of doing and then using the brain and the mind to like make it like make sense.
Yeah,
because you should be like doing first and training first and then making the assumptions and the decisions and everything else. But nowadays people do the opposite. They think what is good and then based on that they do it.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, but exactly like you said, like people have this ego, especially in the fitness and bodybuilding and everything. Like, and especially among beginners, because I had this as well. Like somehow you see one YouTube video, you see maybe 10 YouTube videos, you maybe even read one book. Most people don't even read books, but they see some stuff on YouTube and then they think, okay, now I know what is the best.
Yeah.
Without even having any experience in the field, even having no athletic background or like any actual deep understanding that takes like 5 years, 10 years, or even longer. But they still think like, okay, I know what is good, I know what is bad, and I know what is good and bad without even trying these things and without even trying to understand these things. Because especially about the Indian clubs, a lot of people had like immediate like responses like, okay, this is only for some like a gimmick for shoulder. Like they cannot because they don't understand how leverage works. They don't understand how the tool works. So they think it's only like a light work for the shoulder, and they think, okay, it's good for developing the front shoulder. But in reality, if anyone has worked with even moderately heavy clubs, they know it's amazing for the chest, it's amazing for the lats, and it's amazing for the trapezius, and it's amazing for the shoulder as well. But even addition to that, it's amazing for the biceps and the other muscles like brachialis and triceps as well, and especially the forearms muscles and the grip and core as well. Like it's just.
It is what we have especially talk about, the wrist and emphasize that, but, and I can't blame these people completely because I was a little bit the same in the beginning. But the difference is, I ignored the clubs for a long time, but I didn't make judgments like, oh, they don't work at all, or I didn't go and write about it in comments like that doesn't work or something. I didn't give my opinion on it without actually knowing it. But it was more of a like a, I'd say, subconscious ignoring, which is like a club. I didn't like pay attention to it. Maybe I thought that it wouldn't be that great actually, and that was the thing. Like I made that same mistake in some ways, but just I didn't like maybe not so not such contrast. But there was that something that brought me to explore it. Maybe because we explore so many other different training styles, and that's the key moment. Like you said, if anyone who has tried it knows it, and I realized this the very first. Session that I had. It was like a very short session, and it was not even this with this club. It was with the steel mace, and after that session, I knew that I had something like great in my hands because you could literally feel it in your hands. So that's it's precisely that. Like people are too quick to judge, and the problem with this is if you like you talk about okay you try to decide beforehand things. Same way people have an idea of what is strength. People have a very fixed idea of what is strength, what works. And this is actually a huge limitation. It's like you're literally shutting yourself off from knowledge, from wisdom, from actual experience. Like
and also from real athleticism and real health and movement and everything. You're shutting yourself off from everything.
True. Yeah, exactly. It's like literally you have a door here, you have tons of different options open up for you, like this garden of amazing things that you could be doing with your body, your potential, and you're like bang, you just bang the door closed. Like that is exactly what you're doing when you're making these kind of assumptions beforehand. So for me, like one of the most important thing that I've really learned is like people just throw it around, like stay open-minded. Like what does it actually mean? It means exactly what we've been talking about here. Like don't make this kind of judgments, especially if you haven't tried it. Like if you don't want to try it, fine, like don't. But to then justify it in your head and try to make these stories, you should at least keep it an open option. You go out there, you don't maybe see progress here or there, or you want to try something new, maybe like keep these options open for yourself. There's no real reason for you other than your ego and some maybe insecurity to make this kind of too like quick judgments on things or try to like know everything beforehand. Right?
Yeah, and it all comes from the fact that like the whole fitness industry and the whole how people understand fitness is very dogmatic, and there's certain dogmas that are like the whole basis of the whole industry. And one of those things is that you have to do the squat, you have to do the deadlift, and you have to do like overhead press and all these barbell lifts. And maybe in addition to that, people accept, okay, you also have to do pull-ups and also push-ups. Like these are good exercises, and that's it. But everything else that is kind of outside of this dogmatic world is like disregarded and not even worth looking into.
Yeah.
And the thing especially with the clubs, and especially with many like animal movements and all these ancient training methods, even Qigong, is that they are very multifaceted and very holistic and very multidimensional movements. Even like Qigong, it's like it has so much depth and so much sophistication that it's hard for people to understand in the modern day, because in the modern dogmatic world, everything is linear. It's like always from point A to point B. It's like deadlift. You go from the dead position to up, or squat. Right. You go from down to up, or the same with pull up. You go from bottom to up. It's like always very linear. You always go ding 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 ding, like in every exercise. Whereas if you look at these ancient methods, it's like with the club, it's swinging, and then suddenly the brain and the mind doesn't understand what is happening because they're so used to and accustomed to this linear thinking, linear movements. And the same with animal movements. It's like the scapula is moving like this, and then everything flows.
And like, the core goes like in like circular patterns or something.
Yeah, and none of this makes any sense, and only because the mind and the body is not used to seeing and understanding these movements. Because with our understanding, when we see like the club movements like this, we understand how, because of the leverage and weight, how it like trains the lats and the triceps. But for the normal person, it makes no sense whatsoever, because it doesn't understand how the forces go like how the forces pull behind, and you have to use the tricep muscle and the lat muscle to even pull it like this, or how you have to stabilize the club like this with your forearm muscles and everything else. And
and ultimately, it's not even, for me, it was not even the lever itself in the way. The lever that kind of came as an explanation beforehand. Like, okay, this is why it actually works. But the first thing is, you actually feel it. Like if I do any kind of training, I'm very quick to get the feeling into my body, like, okay, this is what's stimulated. This area gets stimulated. Some areas, like you mentioned, triceps, they get stimulated not to the same extent, for example, as the shoulders or forearms, but they do get stimulated. So you can even find out what areas get stimulated maybe the most when you're doing this exercise.
But even that depends on the movement and exercise, because some of those movements target the lats and triceps.
Well, yeah, there's different, of course. You can do just like a pure tricep motion or pure like a latissimus motion with these exercises. That's another thing. Like there's really no limits to even how you can use it. But you're very right. Like the people don't, because they don't have, first of all, they don't have any internal reference to anything. So everything is foreign, and you can't even comprehend these very complex movements that have 3D, like three-dimensional movement patterns. First, your brain can't comprehend because you're used to linear movements. The other thing is that just because the methodologies nowadays don't teach anything about the body, it's only about the numbers, the dogmatic numbers, and getting from point A to B. So there's no internal approach, which is very crucial for our training. It's behind everything. It's like the heart of everything is that you can actually make assessments and judgments of your own training, and this is like the key. And this is actually what I want to even teach people. And it's very essential, because what also is what I saw from these comments, and there's like a big, is it like a disparity, or like there's a mix of even concepts there when we talk about strength in general, because still, we've been preaching for years already about what is actually strength for us. And it's a little bit different, the concept of strength to us than what it is to the mainstream fitness. Because still to the mainstream fitness, the strength idea is extremely, extremely narrow. It's like their strength is this, our strength is like this. Their strength, and what is this tiny amount of strength for them, is that you are able to lift from the point A to B the heaviest amount of weight. And that is the absolute term of strength for these people. And that is the only thing that matters for them.
Yeah, and then if they try to think about the overall strength of the person, then they just add like 5 different lifts. It's like, okay, it's like deadlift, squat, row, overhead press, and then
bench press.
Bench press.
Yeah, that's
bench press. And then it's like, okay, now you are like training in all directions, and the basic, like the articulations of the joints. So now, if these lifts are high, then you are strong, and that's like this. Like it is like this. It is called strength standards, and then they have the numbers. If your body weight is like 80 kilos, then you should be able to. If you are like a very strong, advanced, then it's like a certain amount for each lift. But what we are saying is that this is still very limited, very small amount of actual strength. Because the real strength, like for example, a lot of people say also mentioned that, well, the strongmen, they are very functional and like this.
Because they do the strongman lift, so they use sandbag like we use, for instance.
Yeah, they use a lot of the same stuff as we do. And we give credits to strongmen a lot because they, in certain aspects, they are at the highest level, like the grip and the forearms and the arms and the upper body. In some aspects, it's like super well developed. But then when you look at the lower bodies, it has pretty much only the function to deadlift and squat,
walk
and lift and push some sled and something like this. Whereas in reality, when we look at, for example, the strength of the lower body, like we consider, let's say, a soccer player, for example, Ronaldo or Zlatan Ibrahimovic, like we consider their lower bodies way more developed and way stronger as a whole than, let's say, a strongman, because it just has every aspect. They're soccer players, like the lower body, it's super well developed from the toes, from ankles, from the calves to knees to quads to hamstrings to includes to everything. Like it's super functional, super athletic.
Same like the Steven Thompson, also like MMA athlete or karate athletes. Like you see their the agility that they possess, the ranges of motions, the pliability, the limberness. Yeah, exactly. Like you had a very good term for this that I really liked. You said that these are like that this kind of agility is a function of strength, and I really like the term because it kind of describes, that this is actually how to say, it's like a kind of like a symptom of strength actually.
Yes, because for example, I was let's say in MMA and martial arts, I was more like flat-footed, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'm like this, despite having lots of strength in my quads, lots of strength in my calves as well, and lots of strength everywhere in the lower body. But I was still flat-footed. Like I was very agile and not as fast as I could be. Then I started training my ankles and my feet and even my calves and Achilles tendons and everything else, and the tibialis anterior. And suddenly I became agile. I became very dexterous. I became like super fast. And only because I built strength in certain part of my body. So as a result, of course, like your ability to move, your athleticism, dexterity, agility, all these, like even speed is a function of strength and having like a healthy strength. And if you look at strong men, many times they're super stiff, super clumsy. So as a result, of course, they have in one aspect, they have lots of strength, but as a whole, the lower body is not very well developed.
Yeah, and if you look at like how did you build that strength into your ankles, you didn't focus on lifts, you didn't focus on weights almost at all, or there's some weight movement, but it was not the point at all. So you weren't even focused on that. And if you had tried to just do like more heavier deadlifts and more squats, you would have not improved anything. You would have probably, in the long run, you've gone worse.
Yeah, stiffer.
Stiffer. So that would not have been an answer. It would not have given you actually anything in terms of like this type of like strength, actually the holistic strength that we're talking about. So yes, the strength for us, it's a much wider. It contains the entire functionality.
Yeah, it's more complete.
More complete. And so this is why it's very confusing when people come with their own standard of strength, which is this lifts, and they're saying like, well, for example, the guys nowadays are the strongest people who have ever lifted. And I'm like, based on what? And in what area? Yes, I think they might be the strongest in doing that particular barbell deadlift or the barbell back squat and doing this type of exercises, but you cannot say that they are the strongest in really, like how to say, in absolute terms.
As athletes and as human beings.
Yes, as athletes or human beings, because you have to also take into consideration that a lot of these strong men, they are heavily dependent on drug usage, like massive amounts. And this is like, they are strong for sure, even probably without, if they wouldn't use, but it's still, I'm sure that it makes a massive impact because some of these guys, they overeat and their strength is based on actually partly to the clumsiness and to the stiffness. So the stiffness, clumsiness, and their massive size, which reduces functionality, is actually what gives them their ability to do these lifts.
Yeah, they actually morph their bodies for these lifts. Like they sacrifice all these other like possibilities and functions of the body, all this well-roundedness for the sake of like very limited strength and very limited possibilities. Because when you use steroids and when you do the same thing over and over again, and then you just add food and food and food, then over time, like maybe 5 years, 10 years, your entire body has morphed into this machine or into this whatever that has the maximal capacity to do whatever you have done for the last 10 years. But it doesn't come without sacrifice. So because many of these, for example, power lifters, like a lot of these guys, they are not even very good athletes. And if the squat, deadlift, and bench press, and let's say row, like barbell row, were the absolute best exercises you can do, then power lifters would be the best athletes ever. But more like at least all these power lifters I see, they are not, unless they do a massive amount of sports on the side and mobility training and athletic training, like they are some of the stiffest guys, like these guys who do only powerlifting and don't do anything else. They are the stiffest guys, the clumsiest guys, and in many ways very unathletic guys.
And you have to take into consideration that we are kind of be referencing these very elite powerlifters like the Thor and the Eddie Hall, and your average strongman is probably much worse in terms of like the shape anyway, probably. But the interesting phenomena is also that these guys, a lot of have tried to go into boxing or even MMA. It's like it's an interesting change. Maybe it's mostly motivated because of money, but still like these guys are now like trying to lose weight and like moving on to this direction where they actually have a much more well-rounded strength anyway. So even looking at their own actions, like, and there was even the one guy I think who was like a really famous strongman. It was Marius or something, but he went into MMA and I think he became even relatively successful there. So
yeah, of course it has benefits, but even like the Thor, when he started boxing, suddenly he lost a lot of weight and his entire training changed. Of course, he still kept doing like some of his fundamentals, which of course have benefits as a part of the big picture. Like we are not saying these are bad things to do, but we are saying that only these things and focusing only on these things and thinking these things will give you everything is the wrong idea and a completely wrong idea. Because when the Thor started doing boxing, he started training very like focusing on athleticism and athletic training, and also more on strength, endurance, and just he started to become this actually strong guy.
Yeah.
And he probably lost a lot of his numbers in his big
I think he even posted like something like that in Instagram.
But in reality, he's much healthier. He's much stronger as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So even that illustrates the point that being super strong in these lifts doesn't mean you're actually strong as a whole.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing because for people, now he's like, oh, he's weaker now. But to my eyes or to our eyes, he's stronger. That's the thing. And I think it's also important you mentioned like, yes, the fact that we are emphasizing these ancient methods and stuff doesn't mean that we never use a barbell or we don't use this kind of stuff. Athlete Twin XX, in all the methods, for example, we use barbell, we use dumbbells in Warrior Twin XX. It's not black and white in these terms, because I also noticed there were people like, well, I guess you never used a barbell or something like that. That's not the case. But precisely the reason why we're even talking about this is because people don't know about these methods. That's the whole point. That's why we're bringing them out and putting them on the table and also explaining like that they are also there, and in many cases they can be better methods, because now it's so strong with the idea with people that the barbell, like you said, is the highest tool because it's the most efficient. And again, you need to ask, most efficient for what? It's the most efficient for these specific lifts of the bench press, the deadlift, the back squat, the Olympic lifts, of course, they are based on the barbell. But if you look at the sandbag and think about the efficiency of that, it's much more efficient, for instance, to the martial arts, to the wrestling, for developing the grip strength, full body grip strength, for different type of engagements during the squat, like the hip engagements, rotational exercises. You need to always ask, like, what is it efficient actually for? So, and it doesn't mean that they're not popular now or that they are mainstream now. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be more effective. There are a lot of things that kind of get buried in the history, not because they didn't work, but just because there's some new idea became the trend, the kind of dominating trend. There's not always this logical explanation that, well, they're useless, that's why we don't use them anymore, or they became something better, I think. But
I would say a lot of modern things are not good for the body. Like we don't even need to go into that. But
we can do
like so many things people do nowadays. It's like it's the worst thing you can do for the.
It's the craziest. Like actually, what do you say? Like justification. Actually, you're like, well, this is the most popular thing, so it must be right. It's
or the most newest thing.
Yeah, the newest thing, the most popular thing, or this is what the medical industry like recommended, so this must be the best, or the whatever. Like that is not the way to go, and that again, it takes just away from your personal experience, from your personal responsibility. You're not exploring anything. You're just shutting the door, like close.
Yeah, but like how you said, is that every tool has different benefits and different purposes. And for example, the barbell has some qualities for some aspects of development that are like amazing. And we used barbell as well. And then body weight had certain benefits, and also these gloves and maces and sandbags especially. But how I see is that they are really underused today, like for when it comes to building real athleticism and functionality. Like these should be ranked much higher, or much higher than even barbell, I would say, and especially dumbbells. Like I would say, like dumbbell is very good for like fixing the body, like and for like general strength. But when it comes to like developing the highest level of functionality and athleticism, then almost nothing comes close to the gloves and sandbags, because they just require everything you actually need. Because what people don't understand, that let's say 10 years ago when I was doing lots of deadlifts and stuff like this, I had like a very heavy deadlift, like a 180 kilo. It's like a
400.
Yeah, 400 pounds, and like for me that was a lot. And I was also able to do the chin ups with super heavy weights, like 50 kilos extra, which is like 110 pounds. And you were also doing like super heavy, like overhead press with the maybe with the get up like the beast. 48 kilos one arm.
Like, 44 I think was.
Yeah, 44 kilos. It's like 100 pounds one arm. And then you also did like.
And I did super heavy, even the overhead press, like 70
overhead,
kilo
and
or something.
Like strict muscle ups with extra 25 kilos, which is like 50 pounds, and all this. Like we have done this heavy stuff as well, but the thing is that alone, like if you disregard all these other things, then alone the strength doesn't mean anything. Like you can be like insanely strong with bench press and pull-ups and deadlift and all this stuff, but if you grip and the weak links are weak, then it has almost no purpose.
Yeah, and that's again like it's difficult to make, because I really start to like ponder about this strength in general. Like, okay, so why, like, what is the ultimate thing even? Is it then like fighting or something like this way? Because, for instance, when I think about when we're practicing now MMA with Nordin Taleb, and I have no idea what he's able to lift, if he's able to lift at all. but when we're like wrestling with him or doing some drills, I know in an instant that this guy is strong. I don't need to see his pull-ups. I don't need to see his deadlift or nothing. I just know that this guy is strong. Of course, there's the skill as well. So he's very skillful, but the strength is like I can just feel it in my body when doing this kind of combat training. So I think that's also a very, very big part of it, because you can have, because the fighting in general, or wrestling like hand to hand without any arms or such, it measures a lot of these abilities in the body to an extent. So it does measure your agility to an extent, your mobility, your like maximal strength, even in some cases, like your power production or force production. So there's a lot of things that play a role there. So that's why it's not a perfect some kind of again, fighting is, I don't think, is an ultimate measurement for strength or something, but I think it's also a great way to kind of get some sort of reference to it. And one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this is also because people have like these guys who are lifting heavy, but you can have the guys who are lifting the heaviest weight and even the huge like guys, like big guys, and then you have a fairly normal looking guy who is just a fighter, and the fighter would dominate this heavy guy, and then you're like, well, but this guy is the strongest because he can lift the most. But then he would get dominated by this relatively normal looking dude. So like, again, there's this like, how do you even say who is strong and who is not? Like, how do you measure it there? It's like, I don't have an ultimate answer, but
I have like an idea that because every like a person has like the same set of muscles and the same set of like tendons, and every muscle actually has like for each individual, it has like a certain potential. It has like if you train it, like you cannot develop the muscle and the strength of the muscle like forever, because it varies from person to person. Like if you do like bicep curls every day, there's like you will hit like a certain level,
maximal,
almost like a maximum level, and then you will just go up very little over time and may not even go up at all after that, after a certain point. And that's how I see is that every muscle has its own potential for each individual. And you are actually strong when every part of your body and every muscle of your body is like well developed to its potential.
You know what?
And when that's done, then you are like super athlete, basically.
But that was such a good view on it because, you know, I started this kind of comparison, this against that person. When in reality, actually, that is the mistake. I think the comparison is the big mistake because people are comparing themselves again to the people who they have nothing similar with in any case. And you're thinking like you're strong if you're strong in relation to the person. But you said, you know, the person is strong if he is just strong. He has reached his own potential. My potential, if I've reached my potential, it doesn't matter if it's the same as this person or this person. What matters is that this is my potential. So that's when I'm strong.
Yes.
You know, so it's an individual approach. It's like but I think it's just like it's a good realization because it goes so easily. Like that is even the numbers and the heaviest lifts. That's what it's based on. It's based on the comparison. That's the heart of it, actually. That's the essence of it. So you need to actually step away from it completely, which I think is really kind of an I think that's the way.
Yeah, because every person has different genetics, different muscle fiber type, and because it's a lot about genetics. Like strength is a lot about genetics, but it has to be fulfilled. It has to be developed to actually reach your potential. But it's still capped by your genetics. Like some people are just have the fast twitch muscle fiber type, and they will be able to like lift heavy and be super explosive. Whereas some people, by their genetics, and you can by training, you can change the muscle fiber type a little bit, but not completely. You will still be favored in one direction or another, but still some people are more for strength endurance and some more for endurance.
There's the funny thing, like we talk about, the strength, there is a kind of limit, there is a kind of ceiling somewhere there. We don't necessarily know where it is, but that is exactly true. Like there's a single muscle has its limits. But at the same time, I think our development is also limitless. Like there is limit, but there's also like the limitless in some, maybe in the more holistic sense, you know, like you can, you can learn it. Yeah, like strength-wise, there's a limit perhaps. But if you look at the holistic strength, like your abilities, your skills, like, learning new sport, learning a new dance, just improving, your mobility in general or something, like there's always going to be things where you can grow, and in this sense, like it's limitless. But I think it's very true. Like if we look at just individual muscle, this is actually one of the things also we've talked about strength training. So for us, for instance, the weight-based strength is not even strength training when you're just focusing on the weight, because the real pure strength of a muscle, you will only find out it in the isolation, which we have developed greatly, like the precision training methodology, where you focus or you learn the skill of purely utilizing one or couple of individual muscles. And this is the interesting realization for people also regards to strength, and why, for example, Athlete 20x method tends to kind of break the entire idea that people have of strength. Because when people come into these methods and for the first time and they try the exercises and they have this idea of, I'm pretty strong, I can do this or that. But when they learn the precision methodology and they're actually using the individual muscle for the first time, and they're like, what is happening? Why this muscle is burning like crazy? The exercise is hard and you're not using even resistance. You're not using even any resistance. Because now for the first time you actually understand the real strength of an individual muscle. Like now you get like an actual reference to the strength of the muscle, like to how to measure it even internally. So this is also an interesting, I think, case about strength in general, because people don't even understand the individual strength that they have within these muscle groups.
Yes, in the past we have spoken a lot about how the mainstream fitness, how people see it, and all this powerlifting and this stuff. It's actually skill training. You're developing the body to be able to do these lifts as a primary goal. And strength is not even the primary goal. Like that's what is hard for people to understand, that your ability to improve these lifts is not it's not a good standard of strength at all, and it's not even good for developing strength.
Yeah, it's not even like you mentioned very well that when you're focusing on the lifting the heaviest weight, you're focusing on the distance from A to B. You can bypass the body to a large extent. You don't even have to think about at all what is going on in your body. Just grunt, lift, and you get up. And people don't understand that the movement doesn't always equal proper stimulation of the muscles either. Like you can do movement in so many ways. Like for instance, a very simple example is my shoulder. People they think they're training the lateral deltoid, and they think that it doesn't matter how they do the movement, so they're just like doing this way, right? And so what you're actually doing, first, you're swinging the body. Second, you're utilizing the trapezius here, which is not your lateral deltoid. So you're utilizing the mechanics, you're utilizing the trapezius, instead of actually utilizing just the shoulder muscle right here. So that's just a simple explanation that you can do this movement that resembles, the range of motion is quite similar. Externally, it's fairly similar. It's not much different. But it's like a difference of night and day between just lifting purely the shoulder. So if you focus on the weight, what does it matter how you're lifting it actually? If you're just swinging more or less or whatever it is. So when you're lifting it this way, you're practicing the skill of moving the weight. You're not practicing the muscle itself. It's not, for most people, it's not even that important. The real like misery and heartbreak is that people think that they're doing strength training and they think that they're now training their deltoid in the best possible manner, when in reality they're just like yanking up their trapezius and growing the neck and getting like tighter and tighter neck because they never learned to use the deltoid properly. So that's the tragedy of it. But for sure, like these are sports actually, and sports, of course, even when I talk about this comparison, comparing is an element in sports actually.
It's like wrestling is a strength sport as well in many ways.
Yeah,
it's all about strength. Of course, there's the cardiovascular element as well, but it's super strength.
Yeah, especially with these biggest guys who are just like boom, like getting.
But like you said, is that for us, like the universal strength training, as we call it, it's about the internal development of the muscles, about the internal development of the strength of the muscles. It's not about the primary goal is to develop the body. The body is the goal. The body is the focus, and it's not. Whereas in the standard methods, it's the body is the vehicle to perform these lifts.
The body is the tool.
The tool to perform these lifts. Like the focus is the lift. The focus is the exercise, and to increase the weight of the exercise or increase the progression of the body weight exercise. That's the focus. Whereas we have given up about like caring about these numbers or progressions in exercises. We only care about how it stimulates the body, how it trains the joint articulations, and how it develops the tendons and muscles and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's what we think is real strength. And that goes against the modern and the standard way of thinking, because even like the Pavel Tsasolin, he's like the one of the like the most popular, highest guys in in this very quantitative way of training, which is like very military. Like users do this frequency, different users focus
periodization,
on periodization, and users focus on numbers and like this. He came to the conclusion in some of his podcast that he said strength is a skill.
Really?
Yeah, he said exactly. Strength is a skill, and that's where we differ. We say strength is not a skill. Like what you think strength is actually skill. Like Pavel Tsasolin is 100% correct. It's a skill, but it's not strength. It's skill training, and what is real strength is the training that forgets about all this comparison stuff, all about these numbers, and only focuses on the developing the body and developing the muscles, then you get real strength. And we call it qualitative. It's like it's all about the quality, and the quality, like in life, in many things, like all these real things, they're very hard to quantify. Like you cannot really put a number on it, and if you do, it's never as accurate. Like the reality is hard to quantify, and that's the same with strength as well. And I would add to that it's not just strength is not just about developing one muscle, it's about developing the entire system as a whole.
Yeah, it comes from the sum of many. I guess that's how it's said. But yeah, I think the simple way to say is that in our approach, the tools, the numbers, weights, whatever we choose, it serves the body. But in the other approach is the opposite way. The body serves the numbers actually.
Yeah, the body is sacrificed for the external thing, for the comparison.
Yep.
And it is exactly that. It's like if you look at all these powerlifters and even strongmen, every joint is broken, every part of the body is getting worse and worse when in terms of health. Whereas when we do it training, it just makes the body more robust, more stronger, and more mobile, and everything else.
And it will become harder to measure, but much easier to feel. That's how I would say it. Because it's, I don't know, because we have lived so long in this paradigm where we don't really measure things, we don't count things, and it feels very natural. Like I don't. Yeah, like sometimes, yes, like if I'm, lifting the clubs or something, I have like a 5 kilo club or 6 kilo club, or if I get a 10 kilo club, or if I'm lifting sandbags, I have 50 pounds, 100 pounds. It's like, it's interesting to compare there my personal development sometimes. Okay, now I'm lifting, I'm able to actually lift more, but the difference is that I'm not obsessed over with it. And it is not my goal. It's not my goal to lift more with it. So this is another confusion, people are like, well, then the club doesn't work because it's very difficult to do like progressive overload with it, and like
which is actually possible.
Yeah, it is actually possible. Of course, you can utilize heavier clubs. You just need to get same way. Like you have a set of dumbbells from 1 to 10 kilo. You can get clubs from 5 to 30 kilos or something like this way. Anyway, but again, there's like that. Well, I want to quantify. I want to measure everything. Like, why don't you just for a second focus on just feeling what's going on inside your body? Why don't you just focus on the stimulus that you're getting? Like, I can get stimulus with any light weights. I can get stimulus to my shoulder, like when I did this race. I can stimulate the shoulder without any sort of weight, and I can make progress in that muscle without almost ever increasing the weight or something like this way. So, yeah.
The question is, people think like, well, how do you progress? You will know when you progress. Like, for example, when I started training my ankles and the muscles in my ankles, like a lot. After that, maybe after 2 weeks, I went for a run, and suddenly I was running different. I was had more bounce in my steps, and just everything just felt different. And I felt like running was just something different. Like I could feel the improvement. And then I did sparring in MMA, and even the Nordin Taleb, he said like, I saw something different. Like you were moving different, because I was moving different because of the strength I built in my ankles. Yeah. Because of that thing. So that's how you see when you progress. Like, do I have a number? No. Do I have some comparison to someone else? No. But I notice the difference, and other people notice the difference. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah. What else can you ask exactly? And same
thing. What else do you need?
What else do you need?
Yeah, especially like for me, as long as I feel the difference, it's enough. Like I don't even need to wait for other people to notice. Like as long as I feel the difference, it's enough.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not about whether even someone notices. And I can tell you, it's sometimes it's not like, oh, I'm just like feeling this thing, but it can be like very visible even. Like even when we started to train with the Macy's, the forearm development was like massive change. It was like I could just literally see it in my eyes. I didn't know how much necessarily, like I didn't care about even, I was not trying to do any sort of progress overload. I was just focusing on the volume, you know, doing my repetitions, going through them, having fun with the club, and the results were there. Like, so you don't need this kind of approach always of trying to incrementally increase something. You know, it's you can make progress in many ways, and you can see the progress in many ways, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. There was maybe certain things that I still want to mention, but I think maybe we can leave them to the next podcast. I think we're running out of time, so. But hopefully this clarified at least some of things. Maybe, you know, you also had some of these same questions in your mind about the previous podcast. So here we go. Stay strong.
Stay strong.